What does this thing have to say? In a new commentary, Michael Orr explains the negative consequences of the Supreme Court's ruling this past June that declared the Constitution protects an individual's right to carry a gun in public. In a landmark ruling last June, the U.S. Supreme Court declared that Americans have a constitutional right to carry a firearm in public places, arguing that a century-old New York law requiring a proper cause to carry a gun outside of the home is a violation of the Second Amendment rights. Yeah, because it literally says right to carry, bear. It says right to keep and bear. But I doubt they meant bear arms, so we're just going to go with bear arms. The New York State Rifle Pistol Association, Inc. v. Bruin case stemmed from a lawsuit two New York men filed after they were denied licenses to carry firearms. Yep. Justice Clarence Thomas wrote a 6-3 majority opinion. Reversing a long-held basis for gun licensing and public carry on sufficient reason known as a may issue framework will harm public health rights. That person, assistant professor of health law, ethics, and human rights, in a new commentary published in the New England Journal of Medicine. What happens if I go here? It just goes to who he is. Public carry versus public health. The harm to come from Supreme Court's decision in Bruin. You fool. Declaring may issue regimes invalid and creating a constitutional right to carry firearms in public will harm public health. Okay. Firstly, yes, declaring may issue regimes invalid. They did declare that may issue regimes are invalid. They, however, did not create a constitutional right to carry firearms in public. They merely acknowledged the constitutionally protected right to carry firearms in public. Now, whether or not it will harm public health depends on the public. Because if no one's needing a firearm in public and people just have firearms, I don't see anything going on. But if shit's going down and people need a firearm to protect themselves, some people's health might be in trouble. First, research using large data sets and increasingly sophisticated analytic techniques has linked lax regimes allowing people to carry guns in public with increased gun violence. Right to carry laws violate crimes, comprehensive guide, cross-reference, Web of Science, Google Scholar. What the fuck? What's cross-reference? Right to carry laws and violent crime, a comprehensive assessment using panel data and a state-level synthetic control analysis. Okay. Meanwhile, the chances of getting justice retroactively for violence between citizens are small, since the same biases influence judges and juries' determinations of whether a lethal act was reasonable. For example, in so-called stand-your-ground jurisdictions, people are empowered to use lethal force in public without any attempt to retreat if they reasonably fear for their safety. Yeah. If they go, fuck, I'm in danger, and any reasonable person would see that, I can just whip it out. That's pretty nice. For example, if you're in your home and someone breaks in and you're like, fuck. Now that usually falls under castle doctrine, but just follow the logic with me. If someone breaks into your home and you're like, well, fuck, and the only way out, maybe you live in an apartment complex, is the fucking window and the fire escape, you have to grab your gun from wherever it is, just in case you need to use it, and then go out your fucking fire escape and try to run away. And if they follow you out your fucking fire escape instead of just stealing your shit and leaving, and once they get you into a corner, then you can use the firearm. Instead of just going, oh hey, motherfucker in my house. Bang. Which I personally prefer. The stand your ground is usually just, same thing out in public. You don't have to run away. Whatever. These consequences also lead to broader public harm in the form of continued deterioration of mental... These consequences also lead to broader public harm in the form of continued deterioration of mental health. Our concept of gun violence is often too narrow and should include harms beyond gun deaths. Hold on. Our conception of gun violence is often too narrow and should include harms beyond gun deaths. So like gunshot wounds, beating someone in the head with a gun, such as isolation, which has nothing to do with a firearm, stress, nothing to do with a firearm, anxiety, nothing to do with a firearm, and PTSD, nothing to do with a firearm. Necessarily, all of these. Increased gun violence, fear of other people carrying firearms, and tension with police could cause many people to self-isolate and avoid frightening public settings, which could further exacerbate mental health problems. Oh my God. So if people are too scared to leave their house, it might harm their mental health because there's guns. There is a huge difference between regular people carrying firearms outside of their home just for protection and criminals running around with guns. See, I don't give a fuck if my community is one where people are carrying firearms just all the time. Everyone's carrying. It's like, cool. Don't see an issue with that. It's just kind of like, okay, everyone's armed. If something bad fucking goes down, we're probably going to be all right. However, if the only people carrying firearms in my neighborhood are members of gangs, that's a little different. I would prefer to have a firearm in the first scenario where I don't need it than not have a firearm in the second scenario when I might need it. But my gosh, trying to fucking say that people having guns is scary. It could harm mental health. Come on. Meanwhile, mass shootings are already creating a generation of school children who live in constant fear of shootings in their schools or community, and active shooter trainings themselves can cause mental health problems. All these risks have been increased by Bruin. Okay. Name me one incident. One. Where a concealed carry permit holder shot up a school or a public place. Name me one incident where that happened. Please, because I'd really like to know. Because currently, I must just be lacking because I don't know of any incidents. Wow. For fuck's sake. Regular people carrying firearms to protect themselves. Completely different than people who are fucked up in the head carrying a firearm to go kill people. Also, active shooter trainings. I think they just mean like the someone got into the school lockdown thing. I don't know what it was like before, but I remember in like elementary school, we had drills for just if someone got into the school. But I remember we would like, so someone, drill for someone. I mean, maybe it wasn't even elementary school, but maybe it was. It's like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, all this. And it was like, okay, everyone be silent. Like, it doesn't have to be super bad. It's not like, oh my God, everyone, there's a gun. He's gonna kill us all. We're gonna die, every single one of us. It's like, nah. Usually, at most, it's like a classroom, and not even a whole classroom. Your chances of survival are actually pretty good. But that's neither here nor there. It should really be like 100% or like 99%, instead of like 80. Whoa. No right is absolute, and the government is able, if not obligated, to prevent harm to the broader public, even in the exercise of constitutional rights. Whoa. Such authority holds for the speech and religious practices covered by the First Amendment. And the Second Amendment should be no different. It's not different. If you incite someone to go do violent shit, that is illegal. If you threaten someone with a reasonable threat, that can be illegal. If your religion says we must kill our neighbor once every 5 years, and then you do it, that's illegal. Doesn't matter if that's a part of your religion. We don't accept that around here. Okay? So long as you're doing your own thing, on your own time, even if you're like out in public and you just kind of like squat down on the sidewalk and start praying or something, that's like, oh, okay. And then people just walk around you on the sidewalk. Like, that's totally fine. That's within your rights. It's when you start affecting other people, and not just other people being affected. I mean, when you are affecting other people. And in that lies the difference between you kneel down and pray on the sidewalk, exercising your rights. Totally fine. You can do it. But someone seeing you and going, oh my God, they must be some sort of radical extremist. We're all going to die. That's you had nothing to do with that person's crazy, whacked out mind. At all. If someone sees you kneel down on the ground and start praying, and they start going, oh my God, I fear for my safety. Are you kidding me? The same way that if you're carrying a firearm in public, like you have the right to do, and someone notices you're exercising your right and goes, oh my God, I fear for my safety. It's the same fucking thing. If you then use your religion or cult or whatever, yeah, you'll say religion because it's your belief system, to say, oh, we can just like kill these people. That don't fly. The same way, if you use your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms and then kill people, that's not okay. Or use it to threaten someone, not in self-defense, that's not okay. If you do it in self-defense, that's totally fine. If someone is threatening you and you go, then that's okay, because you were acting in a defensive manner. Oh, great. I see AR-15. Let's hear. Even as the court's decision may directly exacerbate gun violence, the only way that law-abiding citizens carrying firearms is going to exacerbate gun violence is if they weren't carrying before and now they're able to carry to protect themselves, and then they are forced to protect themselves. If your neighborhoods are already safe or are only filled with law-abiding citizens, nothing happens. It's when people live in dangerous places where they have to resort to violence for safety. That's the only way the court's decision may directly exacerbate gun violence. Only way. The reasoning behind it could make matters even worse. Even as it may do that, the reasoning may make it even more. The court held that a firearm restriction is constitutional only if the government provides ample evidence that similar laws were in place in the 18th and 19th centuries to demonstrate consistency with the traditional regulation of firearms. Yes, and it's the same for the First Amendment. It just got spelled out for the second one this time. So at the advent of the internet, people can still speak their minds, even if it's not with a pen and quill or with ink and quill or with a pen on a sheet of parchment that they can post in the town square, or even if people aren't standing on soapboxes, because they would stand on soapboxes. That's where they get off your soapbox thing. Anyways, even if people don't use soapboxes and parchment to speak their mind, people now can use like microphones or the internet or television to speak their minds. Just because new technology comes up doesn't change the meaning of the right. So if there were certain restrictions on speech, for example, threatening someone or inciting someone to violence, those were like, nah, can't do that. If those were unacceptable at that time, they're unacceptable at this time. Same with firearms. Setting aside the problems with relying on policies that were in force at the country's founding, such as legal slavery, and during Reconstruction, black codes and lynching. Ooh, fun fact about, I think it was the black codes. But that's for another video. Gun control is racist, by the way. A little sneak peek. The notion that the policies available for addressing modern gun violence are limited to those that held sway hundreds of years ago is illogical. Actually, it's very logical. Let me explain something to you. The reason the Second Amendment exists. So, there was a government that once tried to take its people's arms that they used to protect themselves. The people said, no, this is our safety and security measure. And the government said, fuck it ain't. And the people said, fuck it is. And so when the government tried to take them, the people said no. But they didn't just use their words. They used their actions. So anyways, when the people won that fucking war, they said, hey, new government that we're establishing here, you can't take people's guns. Because if you try, you know what'll happen. So the Second Amendment is there to protect the people's rights from the government trying to take them. And why must people have the right to keep and bear arms? So that if someone tries to infringe on their rights, they will be able to retaliate with force backing them. Because if they don't have any force backing them, it's just, don't take my rights, don't take my rights. Oh, you took my rights at gunpoint. So when technology advances, and when the government or the people who would like to take your right get more advanced forms of force that can't necessarily be stopped that easily with lesser versions of force, the people also have the right to use those advanced versions of force to match and even defeat the force behind the movement seizing their rights or attempting to. That accent came out of nowhere. Yet because Bruin dismissed New York's law despite the fact that it was strikingly similar to restrictions permitted in several jurisdictions in the past, near exact historical consensus is apparently a new standard. Well, yeah, that's what they were saying. It is the new standard. Hold on. Their law, despite the fact that it was strikingly similar to restrictions permitted in several jurisdictions in the past. So places were cool with it. Yeah, they were cool with it back then. Like, we violated your rights back then, so that means it's cool now, right? No. Doesn't matter how long you've been violating someone's rights. If you're still violating someone's rights, it's still wrong. It doesn't matter how long you've been in an abusive relationship. You're still in an abusive relationship, and the abuse needs to stop. And also, the laws that are strikingly similar. If you go back, that's why I'm laughing at this shit. Because, near exact historical consensus is apparently the new standard. Near exact historical consensus? Near exact is strong language for very, 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 very similar. It's an analog. It's a historical analog, I think, is what they use. Such a standard raises serious doubt about restrictions on certain firearms. Yes. Such as the AR-15 and bans on large capacity magazines. Yes. Because Bruin also states that Second Amendment protections extend to modern instruments that facilitate armed self-defense. Yes. Thus, history evidently constrains policies addressing gun violence, but not the weaponry used. What? Thus, history evidently constrains policies addressing gun violence, but not the weaponry used to carry it out. History evidently constrains policies. History seems to constrain policies addressing gun violence. Yeah, because your policies suck dick and they're taking people's rights away. But history doesn't constrain weaponry. Our history is freedom. Tools are tools. People trying to steal your freedom is not in our history. I mean, it's so in our history, like there's a whole bunch of it, but it's not the ideals that it was founded on. The U.S. is not perfect. No country is. But the U.S. is based on foundational principles that make it so that the U.S. may strive to become perfect or more perfect. For a more perfect union, I think is how it went. Tools are merely items. People infringing your rights are not tolerated in this country. Actually, they're very tolerated, but we don't like them. No right is absolute, and the government is able, if not obligated. Yeah, this shows their view on things. To prevent harm to the broader public, even in the exercise of constitutional rights. Such authority holds for speech. Yeah, I already went over that. So if there was an invading force and the government sent tons of troops to your city, so many troops that there were barely enough houses and apartments for the amount of troops that just existed in the city, whether or not they were already occupied, does that mean that the government is obligated to violate your right to not be forced to house soldiers. Fuck, where is it? Sorry, I went to public school. I don't know the amendments, all of them, by heart. The Third Amendment, no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So there's some leeway there, maybe, unless the law says there isn't. But let's say it was a time of peace, and there was an exercise going on, and they said, hey, here's 2 soldiers. We need you to quarter them in your house. We need you to take care of them. The government doesn't have that right to force them into your home and to force you to take care of them. But if they're training for a really good reason to prevent harm to the broader public, but then they're obligated, right? It's right in, the instructions for the government. It's right in nowhere. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. We, the people of the United States, do that. We're doing this thing in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Prevent harm to the broader public. Where could that be? One could argue that ensure domestic tranquility, prevent harm to broader public, maybe. But if that method of doing it comes at the cost of securing the blessings of liberty to the posterity, how would that work? Clearly, this person thinks, if the government's just trying to do something that they say is good for the people, then the government has to do it because it's good for the people, or at least they say it is. Fucking 2022, whatever. I love how he adds, even in the exercise of constitutional rights, like, oh, you're speaking your mind, but that's violence to people's ears and their mental health. We can't have you speaking your mind anymore. You can't criticize the current regime. You can't speak out against the government, even though you're exercising your constitutional right. We're trying to prevent harm to the broader public. We can't have you spreading those ideas of freedom, self-reliance, being a good person, thinking for yourself, independent thought. We can't have you saying that. Such authority holds for speech and religious practices covered by the First Amendment. The Second Amendment, I already covered that. But the court's new theory of the Second Amendment compels lower courts to ignore public health research. That's not history or tradition. Empirical evidence. It's not history or tradition. The current gun violence epidemic. Do I still have that image pulled up? Yeah, what was this? Look at this. The current gun violence epidemic is horrendous. It's at the halfway point from the highs. How could this be? Fucking hell. So, the core Second Amendment, public health research, empirical evidence, and current gun violence epidemic, and other rights and liberties of the broader public. Question for you. Where exactly does the public have rights other than people get to elect their representatives? As far as I'm aware, the United States recognizes rights of an individual. It's a very liberal idea. You should be behind it. But what rights and liberties do the broader public have that could possibly justify stripping people of their right to self-defense. So stupid. Work to stem gun violence can and will persist, including efforts currently underway in New York and California. But the Supreme Court's elevation of history above all other concerns has undoubtedly created a much more difficult path forward to accomplish that goal. Sometimes the things that are worth it in life are the hardest. Can't take the easy road that gains you power and control over the people. You have to actually solve the problem of crime if you want people to stop murdering each other. Taking guns away ain't gonna do it. Look at England. Look at France. I'm pretty sure they have quite strict gun laws. But I betcha, 1, people still die by guns. But 2, people get stabbed like a motherfucker in those places. Don't people use like acid in France? I remember hearing about a whole bunch of like things where people are having acid thrown on them in the streets. How'd I get here anyways? Oh yeah. Setting aside problems with relying on policies that were in force at the country's founding, such as legal... Okay, yeah, this is the quote with black codes, which I think that's probably going to be my next video. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Remember to like this video, comment, subscribe, and peace.